Brian said he didn't have a truck. Well, there's my truck. You see it?
1970 something.
No, 1995 Ford F-150.
Looks like a 70 though. Maybe it's the wheel. Sorry.
Very nice.
So I just wanted to say I'm a true Texan, even though I wasn't born here. Brian, we're gonna have to get you on board. You have a boat, you got to have a truck. Okay. Let me share my other screen here. I'm gonna give you some background on myself. I was looking at the timeline and I was jipping myself from 3 years. I have 37 years in information technology. I started programming in high school, Fortran, Pascal, Cobalt, onto punch cards, on old data point computers that were tied in piggyback onto coax. So that's how kind of old I am. I started in 84. Then I started transitioning. I went to college, went to school in Austin for a while, tried to get a job with Dell, couldn't, move back to Houston, got various jobs in corporations, started growing within companies, network PC admins, network engineers, then CIO. So I've grown within companies to the top levels of the information technology. Today, it was interesting. I was at an event and there was and it's funny because somebody's always complaining about IT, and in the event they were talking about supply chain and what was going on, and one of the guys that was up there on the panel said, we've been trying to order 40 brand new computers for the last 4 weeks and we still haven't gotten them in. And I'm like, I can get you those computers in like 5 hours. And so we had a discussion right afterwards, and he's probably going to buy the 40 computers for me. So I'm pretty excited. I'll make a little profit there. But so I started the company 21 years ago. I left corporate back in 2000. I worked oil and gas, rental equipment, and legal, and some manufacturing. Within my last corporate job, I was a CIO network engineer for a company called Transworld Oil in Houston. They had 35 companies under the Transworld name. They all over the world: Bermuda, Bergendal, Florida, London. So I got to manage a lot of different types of IT, MIS, and a lot of budgeting, a lot of dealing with different countries on how they implement information technology strategies throughout the world. So I got a little big taste of that. So let me do this. And so what we do disaster recovery, we do cyber, we're managed service provider, IT outsourcing, and we do a tremendous amount of structured cabling. And what that means, we install from the ground up. We light up buildings all over Houston. A company will bring in their lines into the building, and we take over from there. They can light up the building in fiber, or we can do it in fiber. We've done multiple plants. We've done 500 drops at one time. We've done 1,000 drops at one time. So it's real tedious mapping out where you need to be, also including now all the access points to cover, especially dead spots in manufacturing facilities. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot. So let me get started here. Cybersecurity. And I think right now we're going to kind of discuss that, and we're going to start partnering up, hopefully with Lisa and her team, to start doing some penetration testing and those type of things. Right now we do penetration testing. We've done banks, financial institutions that have been hacked. And what we try to do is we try to be proactive in terms of cybersecurity with our clients, because we take on, Lisa's company is a full-blown cybersecurity company. and that's what they do. Well, we have to surround our existing clients with cybersecurity and make sure that when we go in, we plug up all the holes that we can to get them to where they need to be to sit on our platform. In terms of, let me go next, managed services, for about the first 20 years, we were an IT outsourcing company, and we provided service level agreements and block of time agreements. And what that meant is service level agreements was a year contract. We signed a minimum of 10 hours per month. Those are smaller clients. And then we would add those hours. And then I developed the block of time agreement. They started at 40 hours. And when they got down to 33 hours, they just rolled into the next 40. But now, because 90% of the information technology companies out there are going to managed services, we've gotten into that space. And so what managed services mean, for the people that don't know, I'm sure everybody here, is instead of charging per hour, we charge per piece of equipment, computers, routers, firewalls, printers, anything that has to do that touches their IT security infrastructure, we charge for that piece of equipment. And so that monitoring is 24/7. And with the help of Joe Rojas, I'll probably be signing Joe at the end of next month. He's developed 3 managed service providing companies. And so he can help us with the base and the model and the offshoring for, I don't want to do that for very long, but I want to do it for at least 6 months to try it. And so that's the model that we're going into. Next. This is probably one of the most important things a company can do in their business, is have a disaster recovery plan. So when we talk to a potential client, we do a really thorough asset and infrastructure evaluation and consultation, and we'll spend a tremendous amount of time once they sign with us. And because we're moving to the MSP model, Blaine can attest to this, is that you have to get that client to where they're so stable so the profit margins really work for you moving forward with that client. Because you could get in there and it could be a complete cluster of all sorts of problems that you have. And if you go right into it without onboarding them properly, you'll start losing profit and your margins will be so slow. I mean, you'll be working for free almost if you don't do that up front. But one of the things that are so important, this is one of the things that once we get them stable, we put them our disaster recovery plan. And what that means is multiple redundancies within backups, making sure that when they're backing up every night, that those backups are segmented off and there's nothing that can touch those backups each night. So multiple backups throughout the week. Something happens the very next day, we can recover their data and put it back. And even if they were hacked, it doesn't matter. We'll never pay for a hack or any of those type of things, because we know that we have secure backups. We can recover back, and we can recover back. And people need to realize that you have to have online backups and you have to have on-site backups. The difference within those platforms is recovery time. A lot of our clients have a tremendous amount of data. And when you're going into 20 terabytes, and you couldn't recover that fast enough via the web, even if you had a gigabyte. I mean, it would take forever in some cases. So you want to have something on site that you can recover that client and get them up and running as fast as possible. And something that we have here in Texas, we have fire, theft, natural disaster that you have to think about. So we go even a step further, like what happened a few months back when we had a 3-day freeze. When we had a 3-day freeze, there was no power. There's no cloud. There's no internet service. Nothing's running, period. So everything's down for 3 days. So what did we have to do is depending on the client's budget, we put in place our disaster recovery plan tier 3, where if something happens and we know that there's going to be some kind of issue coming forward and in the foreseeable future, what we'll do is we'll set up clients in different states so they could leave Texas, go to Oklahoma, they can go west, east, to where there's not a disaster, get them hotel rooms set up, conference rooms set up, access to conference rooms that have fast Wi-Fi that they can get to all their cloud infrastructure. Because you want to think about if a company is down for 1 hour, some companies, it's not really going to bother them, but some companies could lose millions in an hour. And so the recovery time and not being down, you have to send those key people to those other locations to get them up and running as quickly as possible. So we do that ahead of time. Some clients can't afford that, but we try to, hopefully we'll never get to the place where we're just, 3 days a week with no power. But that's unlikely. We have those issues here in Texas. So that's something that we really focus on. And the core advantages of IT outsourcing, saving time, reducing costs, savings on technology and infrastructure. We have all the key relationships with HP, Dell, all the vendors to be able to get significant discounts for our clients. And what's great about some clients want us to buy all the equipment, and we have to tack on a percentage for profit. But the other thing, when we sign them to agreements, we just work that out through time to be able to get them the best discount and have them pay for it directly and then have it shipped directly to their location. So they're saving a tremendous amount of money. And then once it gets on site, our technicians go out and take care of it. Expertise, what you don't want is someone learning on your dime. And so many IT companies, struggle with having the same issues happen over and over. They never get anything resolved. That's why we come in most of the times, and that's how we take clients from other IT companies, because issues have been dragging on for weeks. Nothing ever gets resolved. What I tell my clients, or my potential clients, when we first meet them is, I want to get you to a point where you never call us. Because especially on the managed services side, if they're calling us, we're chipping away at that percentage of that machine, and it's chipping away at our profits. The increased efficiency, well, what happens, think about this. If you have a company that has an on-site IT person, are you really focused on training? Are you spending the money on training? Usually they're really stagnant. Anything that new pops up, they have a really hard time. All our technicians have 15 plus years in the field. And so they should be able to go, I should be able to send any one of my technicians on site and be able them to figure out what the problem is fairly quickly and have a resolution, and give that resolution to the client and move forward to the next issue. Hopefully there'll never be another issue. And then staffing flexibility. Well, if you outsource your IT, you don't have the added costs of employee costs like insurance and all that other stuff that comes with employees. So you can get our company for almost pennies compared to having an employee on site. Structured cabling. Again, we can light up buildings. We can do conduit. We do a lot of conduit between buildings, run fiber, all the cats. We recently did a auto parts store manufacturing site and warehousing site. It had 500 drops, and then it had about 24 access points. But the problem with that is that the roof on the building, there was no insulation whatsoever. So think about Texas in the middle of summer, access points sitting on the top of the roof. being able to cover, plus all the racks that almost go all the way to the roof. So you have to really do some serious Wi-Fi engineering to make sure that all points are covered throughout the building. The back office is covered. So that's a lot of the things that we do. And sides you need to change your managed IC service provider is you're always having lack of communication, weak project management skills, ticket numbers are always growing, your IT spend is unmanageable. That's where it really comes, if you're still with a break fix company, you're just bleeding money. You've outgrown your IT provider, you've got one tech guy, and he's really not keeping up. He has so many other clients that he can't handle you. And our industries that we really serve in are medical, legal, manufacturing, oil and gas service companies, and financial and construction. Our ideal clients are 20 to 5,000 employees. And thank you very much for letting me present.
Love it, Fred. We can probably tell some great stories of cabling infrastructure. Before we'll open it up to questions over the next 8 minutes. But Fred, the biggest cabling job we did as a company in our 31 years, before Lehman Brothers went out of business in 2008, we did their new headquarters. It was 57 floors, 6 Cat6 cables, and 6 strands of fiber to the desktop. It was something like 180 miles of cable we pulled within the building.
Wow.
It was pretty nuts. We were on the job for almost a year. It took.
I'll tell you one quick story. Back in 2004, we had, what was great and how we grew so fast is that Methodist is one of the biggest hospital systems in Houston, Texas. Well, Methodist used to provide free IT support to all their tenants in their professional buildings. And some of the buildings there are really, really old. I mean, they're like 50, 60 years old. And they've never removed any of the cabling that they've ever put in.
Sure.
So in 2004, I was supervising one of our bigger jobs there for a client, and we pulled out one of those tiles. You couldn't run one strand of cable through all that mess. And we found soda cans from the 50s. We found comic books from the 50s, all the coins. I mean, it was pretty interesting. So that's one of my stories.
Questions, comments? Who's got some questions, comments? Christian, Brian, and Fred. Anybody?
I've got questions for Brian. So one of my questions, the first question is, how important is Google My Business to today? I've heard nothing but, that's where SEO is moving. A lot of local SEO, that's where it's at. That's where you need to start putting your money in. What do you think about that?
If you Google a person's business name, the first thing that's going to come up on the left is your organic search. The first thing that's going to come up on the right is what we call Google My Business listing. And if you're in retail, you need to do it. I don't know anybody who wants foot traffic that should not be optimizing that. For B2B, it still needs to be there because, again, that's where people are going to see you. You can get reviews on there. I manage about 12 clients now that we do Google My Business listing optimization for, and the one that's just eating it up is self-storage. That guy, 2020 and 2021, he's been 98% leased in all 6 properties. And the number one is because he shows up in the map when somebody goes self-storage near me, and it's proximity and relevance, and it's amazing. So
right.
Something that we do offer. If you want to talk about it, I can show you how to do it yourself, or we can manage it for you, but it's a pretty amazing tool that Google is letting you use for free for now.
My second question is, how many times on your website should you be blogging to keep it consistent and keep SEO on there?
Google likes ever-changing content. What I look at it is your website can only be X number of pages for for MSP type services. So you would use your blog, and you use the blog basically for two reasons: one, to be found by Google, and one, for live people. So take, for instance, the self-storage rental company. The blog, the most successful blog we'll have this year, is running right now, which says Halloween events 2021, Conroe, Texas. And why are we doing that? Because most people are families that are going looking for that. So our blog is going to come up number one for Halloween events 2021 for Conroe, because guess what? Families are one of the biggest renters of self-storage units. So you have to think about it. Why would a self-storage rental company not just be talking about self-storage? Because you want people who won't even think about self-storage to think about coming to you. And where are they going to get the list of Halloween events but from my client's blog?
I got just one more. I got one question for Christian. I know you started your business this year, last year, and it's been a concept for a really long time.
Yeah.
What, how are potential clients, it seems like to get them in a different mindset of doing things is really, really hard. I have to twist people's arm to even look at new technology sometimes. How in your process are you doing that, and some of your catches that you can get them to switch over?
Yeah, so it's crisis makes change, right? And so I'm using COVID and the big organizational operational shifts that had to take place as part of my messaging. It'll over time we'll see how effective that's going to be. But you're right, because it's and why I had my presentation be what it was, with attempting to get people that I'm honored and privileged that you're all here today to participate with Brian, Fred, and myself, and what we're all about. But one of my personal goals was, how well am I going to be able to get each of you to stop when I did that, in terms of what you believe that is not true. And if you can't disrupt people, then they're going to go along, Fred, in their merry way with what they knew, and what they don't have to think about in terms of how they operate and what decisions that they make. So, to what extent is there a trust factor and a comfort level for them to be open to, when that disruption occurs, to stay with what you're talking about?
I just had a quick question for Fred, just for my own. I used to be in charge of the disaster recovery testing at an old company that I took care of. And we used to actually have to load tapes to bring the data back. And it was stored off-site. So we had to get it from off-site and bring it. Is that still, do they still store off-site tapes like that? Because I know you said online and on-site. I was just wondering if they still did off-site.
They still do it. What's funny is one of my last companies before I went to Trans World, they had reel to reel that we switched out. We had the tapes that we switched out every single day. They went offsite. And, to tell you the truth, that's not a bad idea. Go back to the old school, and hey, even give them a USB drive, and here, just take it somewhere in a mountain where it's protected by nuclear blast to be able to protect my data. And, when you think about the cost, how much is your data worth to you? And before, in the 90s, 14 megs could be worth millions of dollars. So now you have terabytes of data. What is that worth? So just, think about it.
Cool.